Okay, we are live now on YouTube and texting. Rumble, not yet. All right, so I think we're ready. We've had one false start, and we'll go ahead and get this live stream going now. In five,
Oh, no.
4, 3, 2. Hello, all you textual deviants, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Season 4 of Texting. I'm Mark Will, the buffoon in Taipei.
I'm Phoenix Willowfern, the New Age Wonder Boy in St. Petersburg, Russia.
And I am Idiot 4, who's going to try and say the word "for" like 1,000 times in Idiotville. Welcome to Idiotville.
All right, well, we're off to a great start. Our deviant text today is the Enneagram. And this is why we have invited Idiot 4, otherwise known as Steve,
Also
otherwise known as
I'm also the self-appointed mayor of Idiotville, which
the mayor of Idiotville.
Is
yes.
the Enneagram. Just to state that we're like the Vatican, but the Enneagram is our shizzle.
Yeah, well, and we have a naysayer with us today. That would be Mr. Phoenix Willowfern, a.k.a. Tomek, a.k.a. the hater. So this should be an interesting conversation, but we're going to be led.
I'm an Enneagram 0.
Yeah, there you go. You're a 0 in many ways. We're going to be led along many winding paths by Idiot 4. Guess what his Enneagram number is? But before we start, or I guess as we start, to kick it off, to get us started, what exactly is the Enneagram? What is it?
You asking me? I don't fucking know. I'm not even calling it the Enneagram. I'm just calling it the Wooagram. I don't fucking know what it is. I know what it does for me, but who knows? I mean, if you're asking me to give you a snappy synopsis, I can tell you I can get GPT to do that. Well, I can certainly get GPT because I was having a conversation with GPT earlier, and I love the fact that I hadn't thought of this, but we are, of course, law of three. The Enneagram is shot through with the law of three, stemming directly from Gurdjieff, who you were playing his weird music beforehand, right? And the law of three is, there's different ways of putting it, but it's essentially, you've got three forces in the universe, and so thus everything is three, right? But let's say three forces of the universe: affirming, denying, and then consolidating, neutralizing, and in a I think in a splendid way. Let's see if this happens, right? I guess I'm the affirming energy here, maybe. Tomek, to some extent from our discussions, is potentially the denying energy. I mean, but very welcome, because you need that. And I get the sense that you, Mark, in a way, you're like the ref. I mean, if this is like us beefing it out, you're like the ref there. You're like the consolidator. You're like, come on, boys, play fair. No punching each other in the bollocks. Yeah, like that kind
I'm the diplomat. That's not my natural role.
No, you're normally the challenger, but in this instance, I think you're going to lean into your 9-wing, that peacemaker side. I think that will come out here. I believe
the mediator. Well, I mean, to be honest, I'm more sympathetic to Idiot 4's view. I think Phoenix Willowfern is.
I might turn you against that in the space.
Well, we'll see. I'm just saying, like, I'm going to state my bias going in.
Cool.
But maybe those red shades that he's wearing will sway me in his direction, because those are just too amazing. Then again, you're Rastafarian.
It's my religious faith, but I'm not here to evangelize, which is, but I'm here to love that denying force, because without it, I can't exist, right? I can't exist. I can't be that affirming force without the denying force.
So it sounds like you're saying the Enneagram has this almost Hegelian energy to it, right? You've got thesis, antithesis, and then what we call the synthesis, or, I mentioned this in the Beckett episode of Guitar and Pen, the Aufhebung, the neutralization, which in many cases is often a kind of elevation as well, right? So that third force, we think of dichotomies, yin and yang, positive and negative, but then there's a unity of opposites where the two opposing forces combine, and maybe that's the third force that you're talking about. But what is it about Gurdjieff and 3? First of all, who is Gurdjieff? I mean, for those of us that don't know.
Well, I mean, I can give you my sort of slightly, kind of down-putty version of my sort of shit-stained version. Okay, so Gurdjieff, I think, was an Enneagram 8, predominantly, who needed, as we all do, needed a space in this world, needed to feel that he was bringing something powerful and strong, and so he went on a bunch of spiritual journeys and developed, cherry-picked bits and bobs of all of these things. But really, predominantly, I think, having read about him and read his biography, I think it was a power game for Gurdjieff. Predominantly, I think that's what he was in it for. He was in it looking for acolytes and looking to play games with people, ostensibly so as to further their spiritual realms. But I think, ostensibly for him to feel powerful and for them to feel dependent on him. That would be my Gurdjieff. What's your Gurdjieff? Because I don't think, I mean, you know a bit about Gurdjieff, maybe even more than I do.
Who is Gurdjieff? What is the connection? Is he like the founder of Enneagram or something?
Well, he's kind of see, if you had read the text that was assigned, The Wisdom of the Enneagram, you would know a little bit about him. He's kind of a spiritual, I don't know, forefather.
In a way,
yeah. Even though he didn't create the Enneagram personality, I want to say test, but it's not really a test. I mean,
he never talked about the types, none of that. He was coming at it really from these, I guess, more elemental forces. I mean, for example, the law of 3 is key to what he brought, but everything, he's part of the sort of the foundational terrain from which the religion sprang.
And he talks about a law of 7 too, according to this text, which I have some questions about. But basically, Tomek, he is from your part of the world. He's a Russian national, right? And then he ended up in where? He ended up in Europe somewhere, right? But supposedly he traveled around the world. I mean, one of his books is called Meetings with Remarkable Men. And so he went in search of wise men throughout the world, Afghanistan, and, rather obscure places, at least to Westerners at that time. And he tried to collect, I think he had some collaborators who, you can't go all over the world by yourself. So you send out your collaborators to certain places and they bring back reports. And then he tried to compile and synthesize all the wisdom that had been collected. And then, as Idiot 4 said, he then went about, establishing a kind of school and set himself up as a kind of guru. And where was that? Was that in the UK or where was he based? Maybe originally Russia. We should have done more research on
Russia,
him.
And then I think actually France, because he had a sort of like a, I don't know, a commune, a center where I mean, he had a whole group of people who basically did his bidding, right? I mean, he was a true guru, and they would wake up in the morning and say, they were like an army, and he was the general, and then they would say, well, what do we do today? And he would say, go out and do all of these crazy things, and they'd go and do it. They'd follow the master's word.
I remember reading something. I think I read a kind of biography about him long ago, and he had one rule, like whatever task you set for yourself for the day. Like every day had a particular assignment. No matter what, you must complete that assignment, no matter how absurd, whether or not you understand it, doesn't matter how tired you are, whether you're sick, you must do it. And maybe that would be like, you know, cleaning the toilets of the commune, or mowing the yard, or doing 500 push-ups, or whatever it was. You know, a lot of the tasks he assigned were physical in nature. There were like, you know, exercises, kind of an idiosyncratic yoga, right? You know something about that, having you talked about that in your
because I went to
2024,
these movement classes. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Which seems to me very Sufi inspired, right? It's like whirling dervish type stuff that.
Yeah. Oh, he's frozen.
How you doing, idiot?
Yeah, not too bad. What's happening in your world?
Just consumed by work, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but yeah, it's my life, and we have mock exams at the moment, so it's a lot of marking, a lot of invigilating, and but it's all good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the side of teaching that it's the side I think that lots of teachers struggle with, right? Like if the AI could take that over and do all the marking and the invigilating and the lesson planning for us and actually leave us to be teachers, wouldn't that be wonderful, don't you think?
I mean, to be fair, the AI is already helping with the lesson planning, that's for sure. I can just ask it to make me PowerPoints now, for example, which is crazy to me. Like, I can say, today, for example, I asked it to make me a PowerPoint teaching simple paragraph writing using quotations related to George's Marvelous Medicine. And
Wow.
I can get that specific, you know, and it initially it would just give me the ideas for each slide, but now it can actually just send me the file. Just
That's
sick.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And then you can tweak it, but
Yeah, then I can tweak it.
That's the kind of stuff that takes a teacher like a whole evening to do, right? And of course you do that with love, but then it gets consumed by your students in 30 minutes and
Right, exactly. Yeah.
he's back.
I've now crashed for the second time. It says Phoenix Willifern has Riverside open in other tabs. What the hell? I know.
He's got Riverside open in a tab in his head.
Exactly.
And that's the one, and it's sensed that, and it's not going to let go. It's going to be like, bring in the surgeons. Let's do a prefrontal lobotomy, and let's get that fucking tab shut.
I really don't know if this is my computer or Riverside or what, but this is highly annoying. So what did I miss? We were talking about Sufi-like whirling dervish exercises that Gurdjieff had his followers perform or execute. Was there any follow-up to that? Hey, where are the red glasses? What the hell?
This is phase 2.
Okay. I mean,
getting real.
Gurdjieff.
I mean, we've gone. Yeah, sorry. Go on.
Well, I was just gonna say, Gurdjieff in a way reminds me of Osho, like the charismatic leader with you know, very devoted followers, but he obviously a man of great spiritual insight, but also a kind of charlatan, perhaps, and a joker. You know, he's a jester, like you say, an 8. He's a shit stirrer and a challenger, and you know, if you said
and an
you're
abuser, no?
Well, I don't know about Gurdjieff. You talking about Osho?
Osho? Yeah, I mean he's embroiled in some serious sexual scandals.
Not really. No, not Osho. I mean, have you watched the documentary Wild Wild Country?
No, but again, I'm almost certain about Osho that he had some major dramas.
Well, but it's not like sexual abuse.
Really?
As a matter of fact, yeah, it's no. Look, he and his people moved their ashram from India to Oregon, right? And the locals, including like the heir of the Nike fortune, didn't like it because they were having wild sex parties. So they, smeared them and said, "Oh, it's there's abuse," and that wasn't the case according to the members of the commune or whatever, right? It was really just the locals were upset that they were buying up property in their little shit Oregon town. I mean, watch the documentary. I'm not saying there was nothing on the Osho side that was sketchy. There was, but a lot of it was caused by his most famous acolyte, Sheila. Um, I can't remember whatever they called her, Mama Son Sheila. It's not that, but like the Indian equivalent. So she's the one who like poisoned the local salad bars, and caused all that trouble with the Oregonians. That wasn't, I mean, Osho claims he had no knowledge of that. You can doubt that, but anyway, after you watch that documentary, you'll probably find yourself being more sympathetic to him than those small-minded, small-town people in Oregon that just didn't like the fact that, they weren't good white Christians. So you had all these American-born students or disciples following this man from India. They didn't like that because, they think everyone should go to the Baptist fucking church or whatever. But anyway,
just to say, I need to probably finish at about 5-ish. I'm just if that's okay.
All right, so let's get serious here.
Let's get cracking. I mean, again, I feel like at some level, I don't know how we want to set out our stalls. I mean, I was going to suggest we start with like this poem because I feel like this poem might take us deep. I'm not really that interested in where the Enneagram came from. I am interested in it as a spiritual path, if you like.
Okay.
And I think that's the most interesting thing to talk about as well, because I think if someone gets interested in it, they can go and they can read the Wikipedia page or something. So my suggestion, if you're okay with that, is we start with a prayer. We start with one of the prayers from the Idiotville prayer book, which is this 100 poems, the poetry liturgy that I learned, a couple of years back. And this is one of them. But I chose it because I feel like this also speaks to the question of why we need the Enneagram, or I think the Enneagram is like a response to this koan, because I think it's a koan responding to a koan, because this prayer I'm going to read to you in a moment is a koan. It's a poetry.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so because I'm going to do a prayer, I'm going to obviously put on my prayer shawl. I've got this out recently. I thought I never wear this damn thing, but just for my prayers, right? Get it out.
Look at the skepticism on Phoenix's face.
Not at all.
You got to do prayers. You got to. He's
like right? Prayer shawl. What the fuck is that?
Not at all, man.
No. You got to have the prayer shawl. Also, the prayer shawl. I don't know. I think there's something about the Jew prayer shawl that's got a certain kind of, I don't know. It's got a certain kind of swagger to it. I really like the kind of like the line.
I like the stripes.
It's like the Wolverine thing. It's like I feel like
Adidas,
Wolverine
right?
On like that or something.
That's Adidas.
Right? Huh?
Is it made by Adidas?
It is. Yeah.
Nice.
No, the Adidas thing is on the back. I don't like to show the. I don't do.
Well, I saw the 3 stripes on the side, so.
Yeah. No. It's no the Adidas. I hide the Adidas thing, but yeah, that's well spotted.
Adidas, as the Brits like to say. Sorry.
Indeed.
We're all striped. Look at that. You got your shoulder stripes.
I genuinely am sponsored by Adidas. But anyway, let's focus on the prayer.
Okay, here's the prayer.
Enough product placement.
This is actually a prayer from a sexual for, and this isn't just me. I said to I once fed in W.S. Graham into GPT, and I said, give me, of all the 27 subtypes, what subtype is this dude from the poetry? Maybe it's all poets, I don't know. But he said this is a sexual 4, which also happens to be my particular brand of idiocy. So this is from Graham's What is the Language Using Us For? Do you know this poem?
I
think
don't.
so.
No. Okay, cool. So this is just the second part, the second poem in the sequence, which I think for me just says it all in terms of like, what is the Enneagram for? The Enneagram is to answer the question, I would argue, what is the language using us for? So this is what Graham says. This is the prayer. What is the language using us for? It uses us all, and in its dark of dark actions, selections differ. I am not, although it would seem so, I am not actually making a fool of myself for you. What I am making is a place for language in my life, which I want to be a real place, seeing I have to put up with it anyhow. What are communications mistakes in the magic medium doing to us? It matters only insofar as we want to be telling each other alive, about each other alive. I want to be able to speak and sing and make my soul occur in front of the best and be respected for that and even be understood by the ones I like who are dead. I would like to speak in front of myself with all my ears alive and find out what it is I want.
Nice.
So that's the W.S. Graham piece, which I thought would be good as a prayer to kick us off, only in the sense that when I talk about the ego cage or the archetypes, they are clearly language constructions, I think, right? I think the ego is a language construction. And when people get upset by that, they feel like I'm trying to put them in a box or something. What I may be saying is, well, when you open your mouth, whatever comes out is a particular usage of language, which then constructs a persona, it constructs a person, and we don't all talk the same, even though we're using the same language, something like that.
You said this poet is a sexual 4. What exactly do you mean by that?
Mark, you are asking all the right questions today. No, I love that question because before I came online today, right? I was having this chat with GPT, and I was like, W.S. Graham, he's like a sexual 4, isn't he? And it said, yes, Graham is a sexual 4 for this reason. And then it told me the reason. And let me just read it because I think that encapsulates so beautifully the best of me and the worst of me, but it also, I think, really draws us into the whole realm, including the instincts and all of that business, right? So here is what GPT said, right? He said, GPT says, a poem of this kind with its introspection, existential questioning, and layered abstraction suggests a sexual 4-wing 5 energy. And here is why. Okay, first of all, the sexual instinct, right? 3 instincts. You've got your sexual pairing instinct, you've got your social instinct. We all have these. And then you have your self-preservation instinct. And so if you are a 4 and a sexual 4, in other words, that you are also dominant in that pairing sexual instinct, GPT says, sexual 4s are driven by an intense longing for connection, often seeking to transcend the boundaries of self through something greater than themselves, language, art, or relationships. The poem's integration of the relationship between the individual and language mirrors the sexual 4's yearning for a deeper, almost spiritual merging with what feels essential and profound. Okay, what else makes a 4? 4's emotional depth. The melancholic, searching tone reflects the existential suffering of 4s, who often feel out of place in the world and turn to creative expression to process their longing and alienation. The sense of language as both a medium of connection and a barrier mirrors the 4's simultaneous craving for intimacy and their profound awareness of separation and alienation. The 5-wing suggests, right, because you've got 3, 4, 5, so he's a 5-wing, so he's leaning more into the 5 side of his 4ness, and that's the more intellectual blah 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 4s, the blathering 4s. The poem's intellectual depth, its careful interrogation of an abstract concept, and its use of language as a medium of inquiry aligns with the influence of the 5-wing. 5s bring that cerebral, philosophical quality to 4's emotional intensity, resulting in work that is reflective and layered. What else? Fours with 5 wings often explore themes of meaning, selfhood, existence. And there's also in the 4 chamber, which, yeah, maybe again, if we are different types, maybe less so in your chambers, this kind of self-revealing, I mean, you've already seen it, this self-revealing vulnerability. So 4s, but particularly sexual 4s, seem to have a kind of a rawness to their idiocy, a willingness to expose. I mean, this is very Kaveh, right? Kaveh Zahedi, a willingness to expose the struggle between longing and loss, connection and alienation, etc., etc. So, I mean, I guess that's why I chose that, because it's, and that's also my relationship, if you like, with the woo-woo-gram.
You
Because
mean the
woo-woo-gram
4?
is also something that I pair with. It's like my mother and my father and my girlfriend all, you know, it's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost all wrapped up in one for me.
Tomek, you're unusually silent. Anything you want to say? You want to push back on something?
I mean, are we going to do any more basic introducing like what the Enneagram is? I mean, I'm just trying to picture the listener. I'm not saying we need to give the Wikipedia article, but
well, what would be? I mean, you've kind of dipped your toe into it.
yes, maybe I can give a very brief.
What would you relay as someone who's dipped? Let's imagine someone who's never heard of it.
Yeah.
Based on your understanding of it,
Yes.
How would you
Let's start with that. Yeah. Go ahead.
I did very little prep for this show. So all I can give you is like basically my recollections. When I was a sophomore at university, somehow I discovered the Enneagram. I guess someone would have asked me to take a test. Actually, now that I think about it, I'm remembering that it was my friend Quentin, this kind of gay black intellectual friend of mine, who was really into it. And he asked me to take the test. So it's readily available online. I guess the most mainstream tests it's even comparable in America. We have like what, the Myers-Briggs, which is quite popular like in corporate, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
there's the Myers-Briggs, which is it's used in corporate and also psychology, psychotherapy circles. And then you've got the big 5. I think the one that's supposed to be most scientific, whatever that means, of the personality test is the big 5, which is, you know, extroversion, neuroticism. I mean, it stands for those 5 traits essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I took the test, and we've lost Mark. Are we still recording when we lose Mark? Presumably we are, right?
So I think so. Yeah.
All right. So I guess I'll just keep going, or no?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, keep going, because I don't know.
Because
Mark,
this is also just life.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of is.
I love Kaveh. Yeah. All right, Mark. Hello. So we're half on pause waiting for you. Yeah. Can you hear us?
Yep.
Okay. So
just to say, right, I'm going to take whatever material we generate in the next hour and 15 minutes, and I'm going to you know, if that's okay with you, I'm going to really remix it. I'm going to do a remix version. So if you're sitting there thinking, oh fuck, this is like our first episode of season 4 of texting, wow, and it's shit so far, don't you worry, boys. This 4 is going to take that shit and turn it into gold. Trust me.
Nice. Thank you.
Alchemy. All right. So wait, you were
here.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
this is important. Your origin story. This is really important, because I'll tell you my origin story for finding the Enneagram, and I think that really sets you up in terms of your relationship with it. So I'm fascinated. Keep on going. So this dude introduces.
Let hold on. I don't know what
I love telling stories on texting. You know,
I don't know what was recorded. Your gay black intellectual friend Quentin introduced you to it. You took the test, and then
Tomek and this dude had a bit of a gay relationship. So you were out. Tomek was exploring. They had a thing, and
Steve, I live in Russia, please.
And then they were thinking, can we do it? And can we? And then now you're back. Okay.
Yes. So I took the test and I was a 4. And so the Enneagram provides you with 9 types. I don't remember them all off the top of my head, but the 4 was my type, and that was the individualist and the artist type. And that, of course, that fed my own concept of self at the time. I was like really getting into writing poetry at the time. I was a rapper, and just my whole existence until that time was like, yeah, I'm the suffering poet, the artist, whatever, right? So I think it was just like very validating, I guess, and like just the whole way that we say that like teenagers love talking about themselves, like any task that I do that involves them talking about themselves, they enjoy. And actually, I think adults also kind of do, but I just think we're not maybe given the same freedom, or we're not able to indulge to the same degree. But yeah, it was like a massage, I guess, for my ego to kind of see this person and maybe sympathize with this description. And I enjoyed it. I asked a significant number of my friends, let's say somewhere between like 10 and 15 people, to take the test. And the findings were all pretty compelling. Like I was like, yeah, Scott, you are a 5. Like you definitely are. This person was a 7. And then I loved looking at the compatibility descriptions and kind of just thinking about how we get along and and it seemed helpful in that sense too, because for each type you see kind of where they go, what the healthy number looks like, what the unhealthy looks like. And even in relationships, it offered that as well, right? So what does a healthy 4 and a 7 look like versus a struggling one? So I don't have any beef with Enneagram now. All I will say is like now I don't get much out of it. Like Steve was my therapist for a short time before we just decided to be friends. But before even chatting, he sent me the Enneagram test. And like I was happy to take it because I had this history of the Enneagram. But I also was like a tiny bit skeptical about that approach. And then just hearing how much Steve refers to it, it's fine. Like I have no issue with it. Like Steve is quite transparent. It's like his religion or whatever, right? I don't even want to define it for him, but it's a lens that he enjoys, let's say. And I'll let you, alter my defining of you soon. But regardless, like, yeah, I do find it limiting now. Like I don't particularly feel like any specific number. I took the test recently and I came out as a 3, which actually, when I read it, it kind of did make sense. It kind of did describe me, a lot of my personality now. Like I'm really focused on achieving and achievements and tasks and being productive. And I feel like that has kind of been my personality since Teach for America, this like crazy program I did in my early 20s. But yeah, if I want to get into like the limiting aspect again, I guess the first objection, is like the 9. I just think 9 feels to me arbitrary. And then just like with anything, it's like there's so many things that we can use to describe ourselves. We've got, some people lean into gender, some people lean into their nationality, some people lean into their age, some people, you know what I mean? There's so many things that make up an identity. And for me, focusing on the fact that I'm one of the Enneagram types, I don't find it particularly like useful. So, and I generally think I'm a lot more into, with my yoga practice, I think I'm just a lot more into, like, I feel like if you come back to the ego cage thing, I feel like even defining yourself as a number, that is very egoistic. Like, I would rather consider my life to be more of an experience and like try as much as possible to not even be a person, right? Or be an ego. Like, if I'm doing yoga, I become more of just like a feeling. Or if I'm listening to music, I'm just an experience of listening to music. Like, I don't want to be always aware of myself as like a solid thing. I don't want to be a solid thing, and I don't want to experience life as a solid thing. I want it. So
That's
for
such
me,
a four thing to
you
say.
can say that. That's
Yeah,
fine. But yeah,
I would agree with you. Me too. And I would argue that the Enneagram is only useful if you experience suffering in your ego cage, and the suffering is connected to how the cage is built. And that's why I think the only interesting exploration for some, not for others, but it's the old Buddha thing, right? I teach only two things: suffering and the cessation of suffering. And for some people, certainly for me, because I've done all the other paths quite intensely, but it's the only one that has really truly brought me to see the bars of my ego cage, which are which form the most part of my suffering.
yeah,
Not
and
pain.
that
Pain's different.
resonates.
Yeah,
That
suffering.
absolutely resonates, and that helped me as well to kind of see
Yeah.
what my shortcomings can be, and maybe where I'm not alone, or in this sense of kind of tragedy. I'm speaking to when I really identified with this 4 number. Yeah, Mark, sorry, but that makes sense.
What's
No,
your
carry
origin,
on.
Mark?
Well, no, I just
What's
cut you
your
off.
origin
I
with this?
No, I wasn't saying anything.
Okay.
My origin story, I mean,
Yeah.
I was just trying to remember. I know I I taught it to high school students in the States, 20 years ago. So I've
Really?
known about it at least that long. But I think,
Why was that, out of interest? So
well,
why classroom?
I don't know. We were doing like a unit on expressions of the self or something like that. Um, personae. I can't really remember. It was a literature class. And so I just wanted students to think about different aspects of the self. But before that, I had experience with other so-called personality tests. Uh, most importantly, the Myers-Briggs test, which is based on the Jungian um, parameters or continua, I guess, right? So I remember taking this Myers-Briggs personality test it was actually at a teacher training
They love using them at stuff like that.
seminar of all places. Well, whatever.
That's
It was my first exposure to it.
Yeah.
And I was just very interested in the questions and the results. Like most of my, there are 4 what do you want to say, parameters or characteristics or whatever, and most of mine were like 50-50, with one exception: the introversion extroversion continuum. I was way the fuck over here on the introversion side, almost to the point of like autism. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. I mean, I don't know how accurate that is, but certainly there's a lot going on internally that I don't necessarily feel like sharing with others, or it helped me see that I lived a lot inside my head, and I felt it was accurate at the time. Probably still is, but I don't know that it's so extreme. But then I learned more about Myers-Briggs. Oh, I'm INFJ. Hey, wow, just like Jesus, just like I don't know, name whatever other, maybe Jung himself was, I don't know, but it's like, yeah, that seemed meaningful to me at that time. And then there's the OCEAN, the 5 traits personality test. I took that. Then I heard, oh, there's this Enneagram test too. I think a colleague um, I worked with at this Catholic school mentioned it to me. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that so Gurdjieff had something to do with that. I know about him, and so I just read about it and played around with it and tried to identify types. It's kind of an earnest game. It was kind of a fun intellectual, spiritual exercise, which I think was insightful. So that's my origin story. It was one, or I guess the latest in a series of personality tests, which began with the Myers-Briggs.
Yeah, I was just interested because when you said, you sort of taught it to the kids at school, I wondered if there was a sort of, I don't know, psychological, interpersonal reason for doing so as well, to help them to kind of understand how their friendship structures work, etc. Because one area where it is used, the Enneagram, and I was quite surprised by this, but maybe not so surprised, and this is also why, if you do go into the world of the Enneagram, you will find two very overlapping areas in terms of the faithful. You would get the largely secular faithful who are using it as a sort of, broadly speaking, psychospiritual sort of paradigm, but then you will also get the sort of the evangelical faithful, because it's used very, very prominently in a whole number of Christian circles, and of course one of the Bibles of the Enneagram is Richard Rohr's book, The Enneagram and Christianity, which is a great book on the Enneagram, whether you're interested in Christianity or not. But I discovered, which I thought was fascinating, was that at a certain point in these various seminary trainings, getting people, turning people into priests and whatnot, that somebody, maybe reading Richard Rohr's book or something, had this brilliant idea, and I think it is a brilliant idea, to teach, teach all these people who are going to go out and have flocks of folk that they're going to sort of trying to care for, in a way, to basically teach them about the Enneagram. And the idea behind it was, and I think a great example of this is Bergman's Winter Light, of course, says the 4, of course, right? I'm not going to say. The great example of this is, a Nike advert. That would be a 7. No, it's Bergman's Winter Light. I don't know if you've seen Winter Light, but right, like one of the most just devastating scenes is when he's the nihilistic priest. Parishioner comes and he's like an Enneagram 6. He's paranoid that the world is going to be destroyed by nuclear bombs. It's all of that nuclear fever. And this nihilistic priest sort of says something a bit 4-ish, I guess. Oh, well, life's a bitch and then you die, so what do you want? Or something like that. And then this dude goes out and kills himself. And that, you could say, is because the priest, I can't remember his name, he didn't do the course that they now teach seminarians, which is to say, if someone comes with their suffering, people's suffering requires a different response. So if you can type someone very quickly, and that's really maybe it is putting them in a box, but if you can go, oh, the way this guy's talking, he's talking like a 6. He's paranoid, he's fearful, he has no inner security, he has to work out and find his security in the cognitive realm. It's not about the heart, it's not about like the, I don't know, that would be more of an 8 thing, almost like, yeah, well, life's a bitch. Come on, man up, dude. Like, come on, find your, go for it, right? 6, it's going to be lost in the 6. So it's like teaching these priests and custodians of other people's souls, right? Like, okay, what are the 9 different flavors of the soul? Because if you can work it out very quickly and you don't have time, you don't have 10 therapy sessions to talk about their childhood and all that shit, then maybe you can actually be of use to another human being, as opposed to being just a God-spouting twat.
Yeah. Well, and again, Myers-Briggs supposedly developed out of Jungian um, psychotherapy, right? So it
Yeah.
these do seem to have therapeutic benefit, right? Like if you can understand other people's basic,
Well, it's the basic drive.
predilections.
It's very much
Yeah.
about working out what actually drives you, but usually unconscious. So, for example, for the good old fours, right? I mean, twos, threes, and fours, we feel love deprived. We feel the world doesn't give us enough attention, validation. Well, but that sounds narcissistic and it can get that way. But actually, it boils down to love. Like, we feel like we've got all of this love to give and we've got all this love that we want to receive, but we're not getting the love. So how do we get the love? Well, the twos get the love by becoming, the helpers and the people pleasers, and like, oh, you've got a problem. Oh, tell me, and the threes will get the love by just being amazing, and achieving and bringing great things to people like Jeff Bezos. Well, I've created Amazon for you. What the fuck do you want? Give me love. And of course, it doesn't work for the threes. That's the downside of the three achiever, right? Like, you can create Amazon and people will still slag you off. And the fours get love by trying to be weird and creative and unique and special. And so like, oh, okay, yeah, well, you're different, so I love you because you're different. Or, you're Jody,
Yeah.
so I love you for that. But
Right. So from the perspective of the therapist, whether a priest or
that's good to know.
a counselor,
These are
yeah.
unconscious.
So if you
I didn't know I was doing that until I was doing it, until I realized that was my game. That my fucking game is that.
But then if you quickly assess that, oh, this is a 2, 3, or 4, so this person needs love. So then you know how to interact with that person and counsel them and provide therapy or just talk to them, basically, right? Like, oh, it's not going to work if I give them tough love, right? Like, they need a little tenderness, and
Exactly.
they need to know that I do love and care for them, and that's the best way to get them to respond. Whereas if it's an 8, let's say, since that's
You'll never see an 8 in therapy.
the type I'm more familiar with.
I've seen like 1 8 in all my time in therapy. Sometimes the wives will drag them in, but no, because the 8s are self-starters. The 8s are, I don't need some wise ass telling me, I'll work it out. I'll work it out for myself. I'll suffer. I'll struggle. I'll get I'll feel the pain, but I'll work it out and I'll sort it out. Thank you very much.
Well, see, that's interesting because I've done some therapy, and according to some versions of the test, I'm an 8. I mean, I also get the result of 4, so it's hard to say what I am for sure. Like, you talked about this. You talked about this.
Worth mentioning the three thingies here, the 3 engines, right? Because actually, and this is a good call in terms of, I think we can get stuck and hung up, right, on the particular ego cage when, let's just be fair. Yes, we're in all of those. So we are manifesting throughout the day, let's say, in different manifestations of those 9 different types. And the 9 types, just to come quickly back to Tomek's question, does seem to actually correlate to some research that was done in the 80s with trying to work out if babies actually, do they arrive blank slate, or do they arrive with a kind of a character? And of course, if you know parents, they will say, well, you're a parent, Mark. They will say, no, yeah, I had 2 kids, and one kid straight out the gates was a bit like this, and the other kid straight out the gates. And in fact, this turns out to be the case, that children have their own, like, they have an archetypal essence, they have a character to them, an energy. And it turns out round about 9 different versions of that, which correlate very, very nicely with the sort of and then you get, of course, nurture, on top of that. But that's my understanding, that actually that this is talk about nature, or a combo, if you like. And yes, there is a predominant maybe energy, But if we are all also head, heart, gut, or head, heart instincts, then perhaps the best way to think of ourselves, I would say, or the most expansive way, which is also a limiting way. I agree. The role is to get out of this, but in that limited fashion, we are a combo of a certain type of head. So you can the 5 head and the 6 head and the 7 heads, they're all very heady. They're all in a way driven by the same desire, which is to find security, a certain kind of solidity, security, stability through the mind. But there are 3 different versions, equally in the heart realm, right? The 3 different hearts. The 2 is not the same as the 3, and the 3 is not the same as the 4, but they're all kind of heart driven, and equally for the body instinct types 8, 9, and 1. But I think the best way to think about it, which is not talked about that much in Enneagram circles, because it starts to get a bit more complicated, the maths, I guess, is, tri-types, which is, in other words, instead of going, oh, I'm a 4, it's probably more accurate to say, well, in terms of how my head works, I'm a 5, more or less, although since I've been doing a lot of weed, I'm becoming much more of a 7. And in terms of my heart, I'm definitely 4. And in terms of my gut, instincts, I'm 8. I'm not 1 or 9 in that realm. And I know we've talked, and I think you, Mark, you strike me as very much an 854 guy as well. However,
Yeah.
you're very 854-ish.
Well, yes. I mean, when you sent me the description of that, what did you call it? A trifecta. Those 3
The
components.
trifecta,
That trifix, tri-type. It resonated. It felt accurate, and the latest version of the test indicated 8 and 4. So, but yeah, I also definitely feel the energy of the 5. The well, sometimes he's called what, the scholar, or that's the 458 investigator. There you go. Yeah. So I'm looking at something online here, and the nine what do we call them, aspects of the Enneagram are divided into types, are divided into anger, fear, and shame. And so 8 for me would be under anger, 4 under shame, and then 5 under fear. What does that mean? You've identified them with heart, head, and what else?
Well, head, I mean, they're talked about as like the 3 centers, and I guess on a spiritual level, but also a psychological level, I think it's a nice way of thinking about integration, right? Because the idea being that when I am predominantly in, let's say, which I unfortunately am quite often, too much so, in, let's say, in the heart realm, and also suffering and struggling in the heart realm, the only way to actually bring any peace to myself or others, you could say, is to become more integrated. So to bring in head, so if you're doing, I don't know, therapy speak, like some sort of CBT, REBT type paradigm, and to bring in more instincts in the body. So yeah, go and do a cold plunge, go and do some exercise, do some yoga. All of that is connecting with the wisdom, the intelligence of the body, which is super, super key, particularly if you are overloaded, as I am, in the emotional realm.
Okay, but it's like associating the emotional realm with only 3 of the 9
And that emotional
aspects.
realm is deeply keyed in, I think. I mean, in terms of whatever miasmic forces are there, I think, the emotional realm is keyed in with shame, because it's about what we say, what we want, what we desire, how other people's experience our desires, how other people experience us. So it is the realm of shame. The 2s, 3s, and 4s are really connected to shame in different ways, and the 5s, 6s, and 7s are connected to fear in different ways, because fear is also, you could say, the miasma that's in the head. and yeah, what was the other one? And then in terms of the instincts, in terms of 8s, 9s, anger, yeah, because 8s, 9s, and 1s, again, being more in the body. I mean, what is the fuel? Whether you're in touch with it as an 8, which you would be, or even a 1, or you're not really in touch with it, which is why it comes up in this lovely passive-aggressive way that 9s have, these lovely 9s. You know, we're all fueled by some kind of, okay. You know, anger is a very, very important energy for all of us.
Well, should we explain what the 9 types are for the neophytes out there? I mean, I feel that you're resistant to that because it's too basic, but you know, someone who is unfamiliar with it, shouldn't they have that basis of understanding? Like, should we not just go around the horn, as it were, and explain what is type 1, what is type 2, and so on, just quickly?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I mean, I can, for example, explain it maybe again, because you know, as you can see, without even consciously thinking of it, I want to explain it in a unique way, don't I? Right? I don't just want us to read some shit off the internet.
Right.
So here's my unique. See what you think.
Wait, can I just say something?
Yeah.
Sorry. So it's just funny, right? Because in this moment, yeah, maybe if we are the types that alleged we are, like, let's say that Mark is trying to, like, you know,
he's trying to say, he's doing a very 8 thing of like, let's set out our stalls here, right? Like,
and
come
you
on,
want to be
folks.
creative, and I'm in my 3 realm. I'm just thinking about, like, am I gonna get my yoga done? Am I, you know, like,
Maybe, yeah.
I want to, like, you know, I'm just thinking
but
pragmatic.
I respect that. I'll tell you what it makes me think of when I had got some people in to do some refurbishments in the idiot flat. This builder, you know, I would notice that every day he would like set out his, you know, he would say, you can't start doing any work until you've set out, you know, you set out your tools, you've tied up, and he'd always tidy up before and after. He was very methodical. And I was like, shit, I never do that with anything. I want to, but I, you know, because again, it's that very, like, I see that as a very 8-9-1 thing. That's what brings in those instinct types. They've just got a sense of like, come, you know, before I can start doing all of this and all of this, let's just get the foundation set up here, boys. Yeah.
Anyway,
so you identify that more with the 8 than say the 5.
8 and 5. But I think
8 and 5.
I think 4 doesn't. I mean, to speak from a 4 place, I don't think 4 gives a shit about all of that, because the 4, particularly the sexual 4, wants to just go for the gizzards, wants to just like go like yeah, all of this prop up. Yeah, people can just find that on the internet. I just want to go for the meat,
and
the juice.
That resonates with me, like in other aspects
of life. Get the milk out of these teats. Come on.
Yeah, just getting very direct. I can relate to that.
Let's just go for it.
But you could also argue that Mark is also that's just going for it too. Is Mark being like, well, let's do the 9 types. That's going for it.
Well, it's a desire to be thorough and complete, and to I mean, maybe this is like that. Maybe this is why it's connected to anger. I want to master it. I want to like conquer it. I want it to be, you know, understood in its entirety. I want to grasp it.
It's the general setting, like coming like, okay, where's the map? Let's like, you know, come on, let's plan the strategy.
Yeah, right. Like, look, it's going to be chaos otherwise. Someone needs to take control of the ship, you know.
It's certainly not the idiot 4. Just kidding.
No,
I'm joking though.
Although I have a lot of 8s in me, as you can see. You know, my 8 side definitely comes out in like wanting to be the director. Yeah.
But okay, I asked this before, but I'm not sure I understand just yet. Like, you keep saying the sexual 4 as opposed to what? Because when you describe that, it just sounds like 4 to me. Like you say, oh, sexual 4. That just sounds like 4. Like, what's the difference between sexual 4 and then what are the other subtypes?
Yeah. So the idea, again, it's all in threes, right? So you have your like core 4 bullshit, whatever that is, right? You know, the melancholy and the melancholia, the like always wanting the depths, you know, like needing to, you can't just give a straight answer, you have to like write a poem or some bullshit, right? So you have all of that, which is shared by all, let's say, well, shared by everybody a little bit, but shared by some people a lot. So let's say those are the 4 types, and obviously you see a lot of creatives, a lot of like navel gazing creatives are 4s. But then the idea is that those 4s are differentiated to some extent in terms of what is their dominant instinct. So the idea is that we all have 3 instincts, but the instincts are stacked. And the most unconscious one, which is the one that unfortunately will rule or destroy your life if you let it, and trust me, both may be the case in my case, the dominant instinct is going to be the one that's going to it's going to sort of interact with your 4ness, and it's going to produce something that other people will go, yeah, that's quite 4, but it's a particular, it's like 3 different kinds of curry. Here we go, right? Now it's all curry, they're all hot, they've all got that kind of spicy, yum, 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 nice on rice with mango chutney vibe going for them. But like you know, like I don't know, a Goan fish curry would be different to I mean, you know, there's the different kinds of curries in a way, right? It's a bit like that, I think. So if you
Goan
think about,
fish curry,
if you take the kind of 4 vibe, and let's say you bring in this very charged sexual instinct, which is all about pairing, intensity, also competition in lots of different ways, right? But it's essentially about like you, me, only you, me, right? Which is, of course, why I love therapy, because it's intimacy. It's the most intimate thing you could do apart from sex. And you add that.
Sex
to
is not
4.
necessarily the most intimate thing.
No,
Just
for me.
Okay, for
that
you.
that and making things, that and like creating is is intimacy. And but
I
anyway,
get more intimacy.
you
like
bring in the
okay.
sexual to the 4, you get the sexual 4, you get a particular kind of like 4, whereas the social 4 is social 4 is more like kind of like they're like the classic, I think the classic idea of the 4, kind of like sort of a bit of a like a bit like that. You know, most of my clients, hopefully they're not watching, the 4s who come to me are like the drippy. They're the drippy 4s. They're like the victim 4s. They're like, I'm such a poor me, poor snowflake me. That's and then you get the self-pres 4s who are the counter type. So often you have a counter type where inside it's 4, but outside they look like something else. And so
the self what?
Self-preservation 4s.
Self-preservation.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was taught, my origin story was I was taught about the Enneagram by a self-preservation 4, who, if you compare me and Rez, it really seems like night and day. But if you read Rez's, I was going to say, sorry, I need to keep down my aggression or passive aggressiveness towards my guru, Rez. If you read her delightful self-help book, which she penned in 2016, you will see that she's very, very 4, but she doesn't seem that way from the outside because she's dominant in terms of her self-preservation. So all of this blither blather, it's in there, but the self-preservation instincts like keeps those lips stumm. And
Ooh.
you see,
Now, see, I like that because the one could still be a 4, but not express it socially in the same way out of this sense of self-preservation, which
she
could
doesn't do any
relate to
of the TMI, all of all, which is why I hate her. All of the, but she's got it all inside. But she doesn't do any of that because her self-preservation instinct is dominant.
Well, and I'll bet I don't know this person, but I'm guessing that she has a strong 8 affinity, right?
Yeah, she's 458 as well.
So that I think that's like the 4, 5, 8 types would probably be more 4 sexual 4 and self-pres 4, as you say, than social 4.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is a useful subcategory, I think. I've heard you use that many times. I just wasn't sure what exactly you meant, but it's starting to be clearer. Now, can you clarify?
The idea with the instincts, just to finish that idea, is that you have a dominant instinct which kind of rules you. Like unless you really get on top of that, and it's fucking hard because it's not conscious, you will be that instinct's bitch. And I am in many ways. I am that sexual instinct's bitch. And then you've got your second instinct, which is kind of like the helper, if you like. That's more conscious. So I think my secondary instinct is self-praise, and that's actually what helps me to. That's more conscious and helps me to get through life and not be completely and utterly just crushed by my sexual instinct. And then you also have like a kind of a recessive or a blind instinct, which is the one that you probably need to develop more, which I'm trying to. And for me, that's my social instinct, because like.
But it's still 4, right? It's still you've got the sexual 4 component and the self-pres 4 component, but it's also a social 4 component that you feel you need to develop. Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily a social 4, no. I mean, the instincts are sort of separate in a way. I mean, the person who's really good on this is John Lukovich. His book on the instincts, which is just, I think, also just a fascinating way to think about us as human creatures, because we are creatures, and creatures are generally ruled by their instincts, or predominantly. That's all they have. And then we have this thin little layer of gray matter on top, which is saying, no, we're not ruled by our instincts. We have language and all these good things.
Okay, so these 3 subtypes are the 3 aspects of the trifix. As I'm thinking about myself, do you think, knowing what you know of me, can I say I'm a sexual 4, but a social 5 and a self-preservation 8? Is that how the breakdown works? Or
yeah, it could work that way. That you're
okay.
That in each of those zones, in each of those houses, as it were, it's a bit like, how do you? It's like, how do you like your house set up, right? I mean, like, I'm looking at Tomek. He's got these kind of bright colors and things, all of that. I mean, again, I'm getting this. There's quite a sort of a sexual vibe. It's like a peacock vibe with the sexual types, because the sexual type is also trying to attract. It's working out what who it's attracted to, or what, and also it's also trying to attract others through that sexual instinct.
Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like the more important than identifying the one type is to try to find what your trifix is, right?
I think so.
That's probably more insightful.
Yeah. And interestingly, the person who's really done all the work on this is an 8, which is Catherine Chernik-Lefovre. And she's done it in a very 8-ish way if you go on her website. Because it's quite proprietorial. It's quite like everything's got a little copyright next to it. It's like, this is my work, don't you fucking dare take it from me,
right? Right.
Like, oh yes, it's all here, we're all just creatures of the universe, just sharing. But she's great, and she has I actually haven't done it, but I do want to. She's got this like super 8, because it's just really, it's like, it'd probably take you 3 hours to do this very involved test. It's like her own test, which you've got to go and make collages, and it's really, really full on. It's not just like choosing little names. I will take it at some point. But that's what she's gifted the woo-woo-gram community. And there's loads of people who think who don't like that way of doing things, but yeah.
Another follow-up question: the wing that you often talk about. Now, is the wing always one position over from the main type? Like a 4 can have either a 3 wing or a 5 wing. Is that how it works? It couldn't be like a 4 with an 8 wing. That's not a thing.
No, that would be a 4 with an 8 fix. I mean,
with an 8 fixed. Okay.
Yeah, that you've got like, so like you've got like a strong foothold in that other. And then there's this idea of the lines that, like 4s, if they get to 4-ish will go, you've got like a stress line and then like a growth line. Like supposedly for me, my growth line, right, is to 1. So becoming more, doing all the things that 1s do well, which is like being very, very ethical and working hard and structured and not smoking weed and, doing all of that good shit. Being a good little citizen. That's what 1s are. Then that's clearly the way, that's the growth path for me. And then
I always heard too that like I was a 4 wing 7 or something. That when I'm highly functioning,
with a 4 with like a 7,
I should be like enthusiast is like my good when I'm highly functioning, and then when I'm bad I turn into a 1. I remember just vague things that I remember.
I mean the traditional take on is that 4s get very 2. They get like the worst of the 2s, which is like resentful, angry.
Okay.
Like I did this for you, and you can't even. I gave you all this love, and you're only giving me this much love. It's sort of all of that business. But I think also you can go into the worst of the 1, and the worst of the 1 is this sense of, I suppose, what is it? It's the sense of, the world hasn't given me. 1s are very idealistic. The world should be this way, but it's that way, and that makes me very angry. I think that would be kind of like all of my Enneagram 1 clients. Because I suppose I was going to let me try to be the individualist or something. Was to sort of not obviously mentioning any names, but kind of say, well, how do these people show up in therapy? Because I think the funny thing is that I do get people to do the test, and you could say this is just pure confirmation bias. But before anyone steps foot in this room to speak to me as a therapist, depending on what they put on their test, I have a little think, and I say, I wonder if their suffering is going to be this or this. I even sometimes, just for fun, I write it down. Like they're going to come in and they're going to start speaking. The language is going to start using them. And of all the things they could be struggling with, I bet you it's going to be this or this. And they come in and, hey presto, the 2s will do 2s, the 3s will they will deliver the script. And I have to really, sometimes I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, like I have to do the like, what a surprise face, and it's
right.
No fucking surprise. They're just a walking, talking cliche, as we all are. Sorry.
What do you say about that, Tomek?
But that's
I'm the challenger now.
That's speaking from their suffering realm. But I agree with Tomek, because Tomek is saying we're not just that. We're much more than that. And I agree. I have to remind myself that every one of the people who come to me in the form of a patient or a client, that they're only showing me just that little sliver of suffering in their soul, but there's so much more to them that I will never get to see, because they only show me the place that's hurting, right?
Exactly. And I kind of think that suffering, especially if we start to think of it, mental health kind of more like as a medical disease, which it is, which I know as someone who's suffered from mental health, like it's just, you become sick. And so maybe once you're sick, those illnesses start to have kind of common traits, like whether it's OCD or it's worry about intrusive thoughts. So once that there are kind of neater categories to suffering, perhaps. And my point is, like, other aspects of life are just harder to pin down,
Well, it sounds like, if I can, interpret what you're saying and tell me if I'm right or wrong. It sounds like you're saying to identify too closely with your type is like identifying too closely with your mental disorders, like defining yourself as someone with OCD. Oh, I'm a 8 or a 2 or a 3. That's like saying, "Oh, I'm on the spectrum," or "Oh, I have ADHD." Like that's your
Which is
whole
exactly what people do, because we
yeah.
are language using creatures, and we are narrative spinning creatures, and most of our suffering is this. It really is. It's the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. And if that, and you can put, I just prefer the more colorful stories that come out of the Enneagram. But you could, yeah, absolutely say, I'm autistic. I'm whatever.
And I like to cut the stories. That's and that's my whole thing. Is like a lot of people. I don't know if we even think about like identity politics or something. I'm happy not to judge other people, but a lot of people carry very emphatic and delineated senses of self, right? Like whether it's their job or anything. And
Sure.
I'm always trying to cut them though in terms of myself. I'm always like for example, like I would
Why do you
say
need to turn their stories though into a cut up? What is this?
no, I'm trying to like why is it
Borosian, like no, this story, it's boring.
because
Okay,
I
we'll
because
cut it
it's
up.
limiting, because I don't want to be limited. And like for example, let's say that I think, oh, I don't rap anymore, so that means like I'm not, my brain might start telling me some kind of narrative about my current situation, or my brain might start to try and like define my relationship some way. But then I can like see like that's just a story. Why do I don't have to believe that, and I feel much better, like so for me, I'm a lot more liberated from just cutting narratives. I've found, and I honestly, that might even be one of the reasons why I produce less, because I don't feel the need to. Oh, if I don't write a poem, I'm not a poet. But like this is like crazy stuff, This is just like, for me, the important thing is I'm alive. That's the miracle, and I want to enjoy myself, And anything else that's like trying to like oppress me and make me feel insecure, like fuck that,
Yeah.
Like
But
I'm not trying to.
here's a challenging question for you, because the reason I was smiling was you were saying, I'm alive, that's the miracle. What was the third thing you said there?
I want to enjoy myself.
And I want to enjoy myself. I'm alive, that's the miracle, and I want to enjoy myself. And the reason why I love weed, which is not only why my skull cap is this color, is because when me and the green girlfriend hang out, that's exactly how I feel, 100%. And I believe truly that I become a 7, because that for me is the space of the 7. That for me, and I did this T&E on Idiotville with Mariam, who I see as very 7, and that's what she was saying all the time. That's what she was saying. And I suppose, again, coming from my slightly cynical, nihilistic, but also from me, that being my religion, I would then say to you, well, listening to you talking, someone might go, oh, this guy has escaped his ego cage. He's kind of enlightened, because sure, yeah, we all want that. And he's not tied down by any of this identity bullshit. But then a question would be, how do you know that that's not actually your ego cage? I'm alive, it's a miracle, I just want to have fun. Girls just want to have fun, or something,
I get it. I'm just saying, like, even thinking about
as much as a place of, because it certainly sounds enlightened. It sounds more enlightened than the kind of bullshit that comes out of my mouth.
I'm not trying to say it's enlightened. I'm trying to say that there's an experience, like it's even in the simple fact of like, let's say you're stressing about something about yourself, and then you get out of yourself by doing an activity that gets you out of yourself. Like a friend might recommend, go work out or lose yourself in a movie or whatever. And then you're like, so I'd rather not be in the space of like personal identity. Sometimes unless I'm in, sorry, last thing I'll say, unless I'm in a good space, then of course you can have fun. But in general, like I just want to get out of even like thinking of myself. Like, go on, Mark.
Well, I'm having a breakthrough here. I think I can shed some light on this back and forth between you two, which, for listeners and viewers has been going on via WhatsApp for probably about a week. And so, Steve is the
Being
Enneagram.
an archetypal sexual four, like, because Drew Newkirk calls the sexual fours the nice arsehole. So being an arsehole, but trying to be nice with it, but
Well,
being an arsehole, right?
no, I mean, I think you're more of the Enneagram enthusiast. You're almost like a 7. Not that you're trying to convert anyone, but you find it so useful. You find it so inspiring. You want everyone to get into it, right? And then Tomek, on the other hand, is like, in a jesting way, I guess, kind of passive aggressively shitting on it, and
Well, no, not here. I mean, I really
in
in
our WhatsApp chats. And I just want to say that I think in the past I made a comment. You said, oh, so I just realized actually Mark is the sweetheart and Tomek is the asshole, even though their external personalities are the reverse. And so my comment was, you just now realized Tomek is a hater? I said, he's gotten a lot better. You should have seen him back in Korea. And
that made me actually even more fond of Tomek, because that's the part of me that I really struggle with, because I am such a fucking hater. I just like, come on, Steve. Like your guru, Rez, who gave you so much. You fucking despise her for very personal reasons, but you fucking despise her. Like, get off your hating horse.
Well, I just want to say that this, like, when I first knew him, this we had, I think it's fair to say we had some conflicts about this. I mean, read my description of our trip to Russia together. We almost came to blows. We almost, like, stabbed one another and let one another bleed out.
I want to say, first of all, like, I'm enjoying Mark's soliloquy, but like, I totally disagree with pretty much everything he said.
All right, let me just finish. We almost let each other bleed out in Vladivostok. But look. But I realized that this need to attack and undermine and criticize and shit on, it's just from a place of self-preservation. Like, it's not that he begrudges you or me, our interest in the Enneagram or tarot or I Ching or Kabbalah or whatever. It's just that he feels if he gets too deeply into it, it's going to define him, and he doesn't want that for the reasons that he just mentioned. So let me just say that I feel like I have evolved somewhat, since our Korea days, where that sort of stuff doesn't trigger me the way it did. And I think he has too. Like, we can now, take the piss out of one another in a jocular way and not take it too personally. Whereas, when we were both younger, and he's much younger than me, there would be like festering resentment, which continued for, months sometimes. Am I wrong about that? I mean, don't you feel like you're a different person than you were in Korea? Like, let's say less of the drama queen, less sensitive.
Yes,
in a good way. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a good thing. I like the mature Tomek better than the Tomek of those times. Although of course, I still had a fondness for that Tomek as well. But I feel like with age, some of the sharpnesses of the personality, maybe everyone's, they kind of become less jagged and pointed, right? Like we do become more integrated.
But only through insight, work, and recognition, because this is what I think unfortunately happens, right? We're, certainly you and me, Mark, we're in what I would call Act 2, and this is like the the last act, as far as I'm concerned, before the big send off. But there is a great potential here, and I can certainly see it in myself, to become an old fool. In other words, and the old fool, I see it in some ways with my father, is that all the traits he had as a younger man have actually become more defined and more gnarly. And I would rather prefer to go the other way, even though I'm very, predisposed to his, because I got all of his genes, which is more like, okay, take that side of me, let's call it the Larry David side of me, but then like put it in a sitcom or something, and then have, I don't know, whoever it is, the more, I don't know, the more expansive, transcendent, loving creature, kind of going, what's going on here with this guy, right? Because otherwise, I think there is I think this can happen. You can really go two ways as a maturing person. You can either become, much more.
Is it really either or though?
Living and yeah.
It's neither nor.
Exactly. That's my point. It's neither nor. Don't put me in a box.
You see, that explains his resistance. He doesn't want to be defined, and so we just have to say, okay, let Tomek be Tomek.
I mean, to bring it into the Enneagram, I see it as very, very seven. For me, one of the great sevens, I suppose, according to YouTube anyway, is Jacob Collier, and Jacob Collier is the least put you into a box musician you can possibly find, right? He just like he it's all in there, and it's all stardust and glitter and getting the audiences to sing in different keys and all of that groovy stuff. And I love him, but also it's like, so what? Because once you're everything, you're nothing. I mean,
but that being nothing, that's the whole point. To be nothing is the point.
No, I agree. But from my kind of foreplace sort of trying to find an identity, and I know it's a crazy and impossible task, but trying to find an identity, trying to find some clothes that actually fucking fit me. It's like I don't want to, and even if you look at how he clothes he wears, right? I mean, he's got like 25 different colors on the go at one point. He just wants it all to be happening in his seven space, which is the seven space, which I think you encapsulated, which is like life's a miracle. I'm a creature of the universe. Let's have fun. And that sounds very groovy, but there are some serious downsides to that ego cage too, which Jacob will never tell us about, because again, sevens, they don't really do the bare your heart, bare your soul. That's our bullshit. Yeah.
No, first of all, okay. Well, first I want to take issue with the hater thing, and I want to take issue with the not wanting to identify a certain thing. Like, I would say Steve's Enneagram is like my yoga. So first of all, like I do have something. I have my thing, and my thing is yoga. I do yoga every day. My wife's a yoga teacher. I believe in like the yoga philosophy.
Yeah.
So
me too.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, like I'm happy to take on that identity. And
so what if we said like, oh yeah, Mr. Downward Dog, and we were just shitting all over your enthusiasm for yoga.
I'm not shitting on I don't feel against the Enneagram. I think I made.
Should we go back into the chat? Let me just find one of your comments here.
I think Steve realized at that point that I was being tongue in cheek and affectionate.
Steve, your sexual response to that. You were hurt.
I was deeply wounded, but I knew. You see, this is what the Enneagram has given me, right? And this is why I need it, because it's the only way that I, as a human being, have found thus far to be able to actually put into practice some of the good old wise words of Jesus, which is to love thy neighbor. Because I fucking hate my neighbors for the most part, including most of mankind. Myself included. It's that genuinely has helped me, because I'll give you a quick example, right? My actual neighbor who I passed coming to this recording session today.
Mark's scrolling furiously.
I see every
Yeah.
3 days. Every 3 days, this man passes me. He is my neighbor, my real neighbor. He lives 5 doors down. And every time I see him, I've lived in this neighborhood for 12 years. I greet him. I say, hey, hi, or I smile at him or something. And he always ignores me, but he looks at Max and he makes this sound. I can't make it. So in other words, he is saying to me, well, from my 4 place, he is saying, I don't like you. I don't know. I don't know what you're about, but I don't like you. Fuck you. But I'm gonna, I'll talk to your dog. I'm not talking to you. I'll talk to your dog. And I find that infuriating. Every time he does
I have the same relationship with a colleague, by the way.
I want to say something, but I walk away and I think, okay, what type would do that? Because I would never ever do that. I would never do that.
Yeah, it's very interesting because, as I said, everything that you're telling me, I'm gonna then think, because I have a colleague exactly like this. Go on.
But then I walk away and I go, okay, if he was like an 8, he's doing it for this reason. If he's like and there's like 3 types I could imagine doing that, but doing it not because they have got anything in it, they want to hurt me, or because they're against me or whatever. Just that's how they roll. That's who they are, right? And if I can accept that, and I can be like, oh, that's sweet, like he likes my dog, like I can maybe feel a glimmer of affection for him instead of wanting to actually go and kill him.
Right. All right, Mark looks excited because he's found the receipts.
3-wing 6 with an 8 moon inflected by the star of Orion. Squared.
That was a good one.
Yeah, that's a joke, though.
Yeah, I know. A very pointed joke.
I think the other comment, we can be maybe even more like direct then, because I find it slightly annoying when it's the constant like, oh, that's such a 4, that's such a 6, that's such a but again, if that makes you groove, like I'm not like upset about it.
I think we all do.
It's not that. Hold on, last thing. It's just not that interesting for me because it doesn't have the same
inner workings. Yeah.
Pardon?
I actually genuinely believe that we all do. Unfortunately, we don't like that about ourselves, but I think we all do that. That we have these categorizing minds, right? And this has been shown in all sorts of psychological research, that people who genuinely don't believe they have a racist bone in their body. When shown certain images or whatever, right? And I don't know, anyway, there's all of these tests that have been done. What's the term for it? It's a kind of a bias that we carry, and and our biases would suggest that whether we're aware of it or not, we are walking around putting people in boxes, because that helps us to feel safer. So again, if I see someone walking down the road, I'm not consciously thinking, well, he's this kind of type. Even before I knew about the Enneagram, but I probably, if I really was to interrogate what was going on in my mind, I wasn't just thinking, here's another human being. I was, looking at all the signifiers that I was receiving, and those were all being put together into a kind of equation. And I was coming up with what you kind of called it, like a metaphysical maths or something, like, oh, if this guy's this kind of person, or if I was to start talking to this guy, he'd probably be talking about this. Or
okay, I guess I would just say you're still very much then like seeing all these solid egos around you, right? Like this is, and I'm just saying, like, I'd like to aspire
that way.
Pardon?
You don't see others in that way.
Of course he does. Subconsciously, we all do. But
I'm talking about where to aspire to, though.
Yes, okay, but there are 2 levels, right? It's not either or, it's both and. We can live in both of those worlds, right? The aspirational world and then reality. And sometimes if we recognize, okay, sometimes maybe we're off, we mistyped that person, but think of all the times it's accurate. As Steve is saying, he knows in advance how those people are going to fare on the test. He knows, and it's correct to an astonishing degree. It doesn't mean that he can't recognize their aspirations to transcend that ego cage or whatever, but you've got to start with something, right? Like you mentioned identity politics before. Yes, you don't want to define yourself completely, but the fact is, in the world, we do fit into certain boxes, whether gender, class, race, nationality, whatever. Like, to deny those, I can't say, for example, well, I'm, Japanese. No, I'm not. I don't have Japanese citizenship. I don't have Japanese parentage. I have half Japanese children, so maybe I could identify that way. But you know what I'm saying? Like, there's certain,
but that could either buffer or like weaken what I was trying to say, because if we acknowledge the logic and the strength of those identities,
buffer or bolster.
Why we're gonna get YouTube comments about this? I think buffer can mean like to strengthen as well, can't it?
Okay, if you insist. That's not my understanding of it, but okay. Buff to buff it out. Anyway, I've got another receipt while you're looking for that.
I think you're right. It's to lessen. So you're right. So Bolston, fine.
Bolster. So here we go. Hold on. Let me read this receipt. You're living in a geometric math equation, mate. It's my job to pull you out. I mean, yeah, it's a joke. You're busting his balls, but it's a little bit, insensitive, right? From Mr. Sensitivity.
And again, that can go both ways.
I would say, unfortunately, there is a sort of a four-ish element there. A four is because one thing I think is very four and quite eight as well, which is what unites those two domains, is that, the emperor wearing no clothes and the child going, but stop pretending you're wearing no clothes. Like everyone's oohing and ahhing, but you're wearing no clothes. And I'm going to keep on saying it because I don't care. I'm going to say it because that's how I see it, because I see what is true, not what everyone else is telling me I should see, right? And I think, I don't know, not everyone does that, and not everyone has like a need, like a need to, like, the challenger has a need to say, you can pretend all you like, but you're not wearing any clothes. And I think there's something in the four as well, in that which is why Kaveh, who's very 4-8 as well, Kaveh Zahedi, I think he's very 4-5-8. He's got that constant desire, like radical authenticity, all of that sort of stuff. He's got this big thing about, like, no, well, I'm not going to just tell you what you want me to hear, because then I would be inauthentic and I'd be doing you a disfavor.
Yeah, exactly. So it can be like an expression of love,
doing, right?
Exactly. It's an expression of love to not be walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
To tell you, like, my because and trust that you're able to separate that from, like, how I view you, the affection.
Yes, but here's the interesting thing.
I get your point, Mark. I get your point.
Yeah, but not only that that dynamic is fine, but when it's reversed and someone says something similar back to you, the old Tomek, and this is where I think you've evolved. Where you have evolved, the old Tomek would take offense and be like upset for days, weeks, months, and try to enlist, his associates.
Okay, but I could make the same argument back at you and say, like, if I characterize your behavior a certain way, you don't like it, whereas you could just shake that off too, right? Like if I like made some moral objection, you could just laugh about it and not give a shit, but you got upset about it. You didn't like
what are we talking about now?
I don't know. I want to keep it as hypothetical as possible, but let's just say I made some judgment, right? You would not, and you didn't enjoy that judgmental side of my character.
Well, but
I'm sorry.
What I'm saying is I could, theoretically, it depends on the dynamic between us in our, like if there's a mutuality and a legitimate back and forth, then okay. But again, we're talking about our previous. It's almost like it's almost like a previous life. Like I feel like we're both different people now than we were when we first knew each other in Korea. But like then
That's an interesting question Tomek asked, because maybe another way of phrasing it, I would put to you to kind of test your kind of eighth dimension, if you like, right? Because I think the one thing that is different between fours and eights, although we can both be quite challenging, is that fours really fucking do care what people think of them, and we really do want everyone to love us, if ideally, particularly love us, for being unique and individual and whatever. Whereas eights, I get a sense, and I really admire this. For me, a lot of my moving forward, I told you in our last discussion for the reading thing, right? That, Orion, Taraban 8 really helped me kind of deal with all my romantic bullshit, because I get a sense that eights are a bit more comfortable with people not liking them. Or being in disagreement, or even like saying something that's a bit hurtful. They're like, yeah, that hurt. But like, I'm not gonna I don't know, chase you up and destroy you, unless you're a very toxic eight and it's a woman who's hurt you or let you down or whatever, betrayed you or whatever. But generally speaking, my sense of eight is that eights can take the punches. They really can. There's this sort of more of a solidity to them that I do not have, that my ego doesn't have, let's say.
well, so if we're personalizing it, I think this four. I mean, when I first met Tomek, I would say he's very four, right? But I think maybe he's right that he's kind of outgrown that or developed other aspects of himself. Maybe he did toughen himself up in the eight sense, right? Where he can brush things off that maybe he didn't before.
Also, I take antidepressants. Sorry.
That can help. Yeah. Sure.
Whatever works.
Whatever the idiot four prescribes. No, you didn't prescribe that.
No, yeah, but I'm, as someone who's taken off and on, mostly on antidepressants for most of my adult life, I'm hardly going to knock them.
Or weed, right? I mean, it's just a different type of
no judgment.
In a way. Yeah, I'm just saying that biologically, I think I'm more emotional than then my medication helps me not be, like I'm.
Yeah.
But I think triggered. But I think it's evolution too. Like you're a different person. Yeah, for sure.
But I kind of miss some of, like I don't want to like fight with you to like get upset, but I like when we argue,
Well, yes, but now what I'm saying is, I mean, I'm complimenting both of us in a way. I'm saying like we both now can handle that without being,
right,
as you used to say, butthurt. It's like we I don't know, we respect one another enough, we respect ourselves enough that we can say, yeah, it's okay to disagree and not be like, not consider that disagreement to be the end of the world or a reason to hate one another. That's so silly. I
was definitely too judgmental. Like, that's for sure. Like, there's no doubt about that.
That's that we're talking about Myers-Briggs, right? That's the J, the judgment, right? And I'm that too. I'm an INFJ allegedly, right? So I'm more judgmental than whatever the polar opposite of that is. I forget. Perception, I think. Yeah. So.
And it is that judgment, I think, that really, that does trip us up, and it does get in the way of doing what we all recognize we need to do and want to do, which is love our neighbors. But where does the judgment come from? I think the judgment comes from this unconscious belief, or even a very conscious belief, that that we are like, I'm human, you're human, so surely we function in the same way, right? Surely, like, when you make that comment, if I was to make that comment, I'd be making that comment for this reason. So you must be making it for this reason too. And that's where the Enneagram has really, really helped me, because it's genuinely enabled me to go, well, maybe there are 9 different ways that someone would come up with that comment.
Yeah.
And do not fall into the trap. And unfortunately, I fall into the trap 90% of the time anyway, but do not fall into the trap of thinking they've made the comment for the reason you would.
Yeah.
And
That
then
makes
hating
perfect
them
sense.
for it, right?
People are very different. That's right.
It's really helpful for that. It is really
Totally.
helpful for that.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
And yeah.
All right. Well, we're bumping up on 1 a.m. here, which I guess is 5
Yeah.
p.m. in the UK, which is your hard out, right?
Doggy walking time. Yeah. I mean, I could stay another 5 minutes, but I do need to take Max before I see my sexual 4. I've got a sexual 4 client coming at 6 p.m. And guess what? Guess what his sessions are about? Love and not getting enough of it, and breakups, and it's all just like, all of that stuff, all that good stuff.
Well, what do we want to say in the last 5 minutes? We've been all over the place. I think we provided at least a partial introduction to the Enneagram. I don't know if I played the role that we envisioned me having in the beginning as kind of mediator between 2 opposing forces, but maybe I did. I do still lean towards thinking that it's a very useful and interesting lens, as Tomek described it, or tool, therapeutic tool, a tool for self-awareness, self-knowledge, spiritual development.
And I generally agree, by the way. Like I generally
Yeah.
agree. It's not where
One thing I wanted to do in this is like learn more about the different types, because I feel like I understand very well 4, 5, and 8, but maybe that's because I'm so much in an ego cage myself, and I just identify with those, and I'm quite sure that's my trifix, right? Like my default, even though I know I can exist or whatever, like visit these other realms and experience these other types, but it's like not my default mode. So I think it's useful to know that about myself, and then try to, develop these other aspects of the personality. Because I don't know if it was Gurdjieff, but somebody said, the best, in Jungian terms, the most integrated person is the one who has developed all 9 of the traits, right? Like that would be kind of an ideal. So maybe my task should be to learn more about these other types and try to be more of a peacemaker, reformer, helper, achiever.
That's a cool way of looking at it, because that very short test, which is a bit hokey, the eclectic Enneagram one that I sent to you 2 guys to do,
and we'll put it in the description.
Yeah, the way it all lines up, it presents it almost like a bar chart, sort of saying which are the main ingredients there. And it doesn't always get your first type, but I think it does sort of show what are the main ingredients, which are the main types are there, and also which ones are really, really low down on the list. And one way, and it's hardly ever thought about it this way, but I think it is a cool way to think about it, is, look at the top stuff and go, yeah, that's right, I do have that, I do have that, I do have that. But as you say, also look at where you don't, you don't sort of inhabit those zones right at the bottom, because maybe to become a fuller, happier, more rounded person, that's a way of doing it. Yeah.
I want to mention this book again. This is A Vision by William Butler Yeats, the Irish poet and dramatist. This is a mystical, esoteric work. We know that Yeats was a member of the Golden Dawn and, maybe other esoteric organizations, but really interesting discussion of personality types that he identifies, and there's a lot more than 9. It's been a while since I read it, but this is a book that I think you would definitely appreciate, Steve. You ought to read it, and then we should have a discussion about it on Books Are
Yeah, you
Burning.
suggested that. That sounds great.
I'm looking now. There are 28 types. So it's like number 1, no description except complete plasticity. Number 2, beginning of energy. And he's got like will, mask, creative mind, and body of fate. So there are 4 subtypes as opposed to the 3 with the Enneagram. And so like he'll identify a type, and then he'll point to some historical or famous person saying, oh, he's that type. Like, here's some more: the positive man, the demonic man, the emotional man, the assertive man, the concrete man, and so on.
Yeah.
I'd like to revisit
whatever
this.
they are, they're all archetypes, and I think archetypes are very, very important to us, right? If I say, I don't know, whatever, I say to you, Drake or Kendrick, immediately you get 2 archetypes, kind of, I would suggest, popping into your head, right? 2 types of rappers. And, as we know, those 2 types can sometimes clash. Well, all the types clash in a way. It does call up a kind of an archetype. And I just love thinking about those archetypes, I guess.
But one Kendrick album is very different from another.
That's true. Yeah, in that way. I wonder what Kendrick is. I mean, Drake's like a 3, probably. I think Drake's right, because he's, and then what would Kendrick be in terms of the Enneagram? He feels much more kind of 4-ish, 5-ish. I mean, he's he's in that sort of space.
He's in his head a lot, and he's prone to depression. I don't know.
Yeah.
Speaking of hip hop, Mark, I'm going to deliver us to the hip hop realm on the next episode of Texting. I know previously I promised that we would go and listen to Outkast Stankonia. However, right now I'm kind of on a different trip. So I'd like to introduce you to some Polish hip hop.
All right.
And I'm thinking about an album by kind of like not gangster rap, but a group that started out as psycho rap. But although this album is not really psycho rap, but it's an album called 63 minuty dookoła świata, which means like in 63 minutes around the world. And I'd just like to get your take on it, on the aesthetic sound of Silesia from the 90s. So
okay,
that might be where we go, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
You have to give it at least 4 full listens, please.
Okay, send me a link.
Nice. And Idiot 4, I'd love for you to provide your feedback as well. On this
album?
Yeah, I will share the music with you. We'll figure it out, but
cool. Yeah, I loved, I'm not of all the of various genres, I will listen to the the Kendricks of this world clearly, but because he's a genius. But you've got to listen to the genii, right? But geniuses, genii. But yeah, that's one musical genre that I don't have like a very strong affinity with. So, but I'd love to explore a bit more through the texting lens. And I really, really loved that half a minute your pink video, as I like to think of it. I really loved that. Yeah.
So okay, Mark, you're gonna put lots of links in the description for people to take the test.
Yeah. I think I better, but the challenging part will be to collate all these clips we're going to have because of my technical difficulties. I think I'm on take 4 or 5, so we'll see how Riverside processes all this.
It might make it better in a way. It'll make it episodic rather than.
Well, I mean, I was thinking also because I'd like to, if that's okay, kind of put this on Idiotville because it is the official idiot religion, right? So I mean, they'll lap it
Yeah.
up.
They'll
When
lap
I
it up.
say, I mean me, because that's what it is. It's just my little, weird Synecdoche, New York project. Ultimately, with all its downsides and
Shout out to
yeah, but I was genuinely thinking, and so you could send me like just any material, right? That I would just sit down, watch it again, and then like take all the raw material and maybe try and structure it maybe into like 9 little pieces. With some intros, maybe I'll
great. Yeah.
Like really kind of, so all the stuff that maybe we felt that we didn't do, like for example, do the types and all of that stuff.
Yes.
I'll stick that in post edit.
Great. I'll leave it to you.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So thanks to everyone. This has been Texting Season 4, Episode 1. This is our 4th season, believe it or not. And Tomek has the red shades to prove it. So
Enneagram 4s and 3s, stand up.
458 Trifix in the house. See you next time. Farewell.
Peace.
Like, subscribe, download, suck off. Bye. All right. I don't know. Technically,